Hello guys, here we are again with another edition of the Long Range Corner with your host, Matthew Bardeen. So we're going to try this. I'm doing this on my Mac. Hopefully this is going to work and it's not going to die. My Mac has been running well, so my Hackintosh really. I've now got it set up on a different Ethernet port and it seems to be more stable, at least in the uploads, and we'll hope that it continues to be stable while we're doing this. So hopefully somebody was going to join me tonight. I haven't really advertised, unfortunately. I was just kind of putting things together last minute. My idea tonight is to do a little bit of a live build. I've got my QAV540 here in front of me. You can't see it, but it's there, trust me. Hope you guys can hear me. Mic's a little bit off. Usually I have it here in front of me. Yeah, somebody's out there. Hey, Dennis and Flying High, how you guys doing? And Gons. Hello, Gons. Hola. So basically, what my plan is for today, for this evening, is I'm going to build out my 540. At least I get as far into it as I can. I don't have a lot of the stuff I need, like a video transmitter and OSD and things like that. But I'm probably going to put a KISS on there if I have one, and change out the ESCs. I've got right now Rotor Geek 20 ESCs on there. I'm going to change those out for some KISS 24s. So that's the plan for this evening. But first, hi Meguro. Basically, I have a beer here. It's spilling all over the place. Nice India Pale Ale from Fuller's. I like Fuller's because they produce full pints. That's a shout out to Stephen Price. He's all upset about metric. But yeah, these are full English pints. No, I lie. They're half liters. Fuller's. I'm so upset. Yeah, so get my beer. Beer is ready. Change my camera over. You're not going to be able to see me here. Basically, I only have one camera. I was trying to set up my Canon as a kind of to film this, my Canon DSLR, but unfortunately that wasn't working very well. So we're going to have to deal with just watching the build. Beer, it's like a sand clock for you. Yes, of course. It's Saturday night. It's time for a beer. And I don't go out, so I might as well share it with you guys. So yeah, and I'll talk about how I actually retrieve my quad while I'm doing this, so you're not completely bored. So here we go. We're going to move this over. Hopefully you can see this. I kind of have this set up. We're going to see how this looks. Hey, there we go. And so you can see my QAV540 here. So I don't know if you guys know about the QAV540, but it has a dirty section and a clean section. So this is the dirty section that we're working on here. Let me get the clean section. The clean section is this right here, the big thing. They've already got a KISS in there, as you can see, a brand new KISS. Yep. So that's the plan, is to get this kind of wired up. I'm a little bit not sure how I'm going to wire up the KISS, but we'll figure it out. So first things first, big arms. Yes, these are big arms. They're aluminum. The idea is very nice, but the execution is a little bit, leaves a little bit to be desired. Basically what happens with these is when you hit something, they bend. So, and when they bend, you kind of have to hammer them back with a big rubber mallet. And yes, like the old juice videos, So the idea is to turn this into a kind of acro long distance machine. Kind of minimalistic, no gimbal, nothing like that. We'll see how well it flies. Sorry here. It's going to be a little bit of a pain in the butt because there's not a little room here for the... Yeah, we may just extend those. So, on this build, these are the motors I'm using are Luminaire. Let's see if you can see that there. Probably not going to focus on that, but Luminaire 4008, 740 kV motors. So these are big motors for basically 13-inch props. 12-inch props actually is what I'm going to run on this because that's what I've got. Yeah, so should be an interesting build. Should be an interesting flyer. We'll see what kind of distance it gets. I'm guessing it's not going to get as much distance as the G2 that I have, mainly because the G2 is extremely light and this is extremely heavy. This is, I think, just the base frame itself is probably about 700 grams, somewhere around there. Yeah, let's see. So, in other news, while I'm doing this, I was able to retrieve my quad from the tree, my alien that was stuck in the tree. There is a vlog coming about that at some point. I just have to get around to producing it, figuring out how I want to do that. But in the end, it took about 6 hours to get it out from when he got there to when we actually got it down. By the end of the day, we were experts in slingshots. So I did use the slingshot. My washer weight disappeared on the first throw, or the first shot. So after that, we started using rocks. We used, I believe, this right here is the rock that I used to get it down. Let's get a little bit more light here. So that's the rock I used to get it down, and this is an example of how we tied off the rock with the fishing line. The fishing line didn't work as well as I had hoped. It kind of broke quite easily, just ripped out. There's too much momentum on it. So that's something to be aware of. But yeah, the slingshot worked well. That's a Hyper Dog, if I remember correctly, 4-ball launcher. I bought it to exercise the dog, but the idea that, hey, maybe eventually it might come in useful to actually retrieve quads. And sure enough, it did. So we got that line up and over, and then we strung up the longer. We strung up the higher weight line. I think that was a 200 kilo weight line. It was stuck in a tree. It was stuck in an alamo, which is kind of a poplar tree. Probably a good 20 meters high. I think we estimated 20 to 25 meters high. We had 55 meters of rope and probably about 10 meters of extra line when we actually got it strung up there. So we launched it a couple times, got it really close a couple times, and just weren't able to kind of move the quad. It just stayed where it was, and of course that's not good. It was quite well stuck in the tree. We actually had to bring the tree branch down, and amazingly, as I was bringing the tree branch down, the tree branch fell kind of upside down from the tree and got stuck, got lodged about halfway down. and the quad stayed in the branch. That's how well it was stuck. Even after moving, even after jostling, even after falling, the quad was still stuck in the branch. It wasn't only until we got it basically down on the ground when the quad fell out. But yeah, it actually, once we got figured out how to shoot the slingshot correctly, it came out pretty easily. Of course, figuring out how to shoot the slingshot correctly took about 6 hours. Oh, okay, 5.5 hours. We'll give it about that. So now I'm an expert in using the slingshot. So hopefully, if I ever get my quad stuck in a tree again, it should be much easier to get it down. Should. We're not going to worry about motor order, by the way, when we're doing this, because KISS allows motor direction, because KISS allows you to change that in software. So we're just going to look these up. Running reverse props. No, just normal props. Unfortunately, didn't have the turtle mode enabled, and I doubt that would have helped because, as I mentioned before, it was stuck. It basically wedged itself into the branch. The Alamo trees are such that they kind of, the main tree goes up, and the side branches go up at a very sharp angle. And what had happened is the quad got kind of caught between those two angles, so it got kind of caught down in here, in that area. So, unfortunately, just no way to get it down easily, at least moving the quad. And I can attest to that because at some point we actually hit the quad with a rock and it didn't move. We hooked the branch in front of it and it didn't move. So, and it was really windy as well at some point, and it just wasn't moving. So no amount of movement that the quad made was actually going to get it out. As you're watching this, you can see I'm twisting. Nearly got stuck up a monkey puzzle. We have a lot of monkey puzzles around here. They're actually native to Chile and Argentina. I'm really not sure what's going on with focus, why it keeps jumping focus like that. Yeah, so we got a lot of monkey puzzle trees around here. Gone Q in chat has actually lost one of his quads in a monkey puzzle, and lost in the sense that we just don't know where it is. We sent up another quad looking for it and just didn't find it. So it's somewhere in Kongi National Park, in one of those trees, waiting to be found, come down, etc., etc. So yeah, not really a good place to lose your quad, up in a monkey puzzle tree. So I always twist my wires before soldering. It's just good practice. I don't like how, like, when you stick them down, if they're not twisted, they tend to kind of fray, and you get like little bits of wire that come off, out, and to different places. So I'm not sure if you can see this very well. I'm not sure I can move this down anymore either. So I might be able to zoom in. Maybe. Yeah, I'm not sure. Doesn't look like I'm able to. At least the stream's working. That's at least a plus. Yeah, you guys are here for the ambience. not necessarily for the tech stuff. I'm assuming most of you guys have put together quads, so you don't really need to know this part of the setup. Right now we're just preparing the wires to be attached to the ESCs. The little carbon fiber thingy I'm using here to hold the wires is, if I recall correctly, a Mr. Grippy from Hobby King. Cheap and fairly effective, especially when you want to put two wires together. It's a godsend, which we will be doing later because I need to extend these wires to actually reach the ESCs. Ooh, that's nice and toasty. Yeah, battery disconnect is definitely the worst case scenario. It's really hard to recover a quad if you have no indication of where it is. You can't hear it, you can't see it. It's surprisingly difficult to find. I was actually lucky. I thought I was going to have more of a problem to find my alien that was stuck in the tree, but I found it rather quickly. What aided me was the lighting conditions were optimal to see it. So when I lost it, it was the afternoon and the light was coming in from the wrong direction, so I couldn't really get a good glance of where it was in the tree. Once I actually saw it, once I got up there in the morning, then I saw it like almost immediately. And I got a picture of that somewhere showing where it was stuck in the tree. I got a nice video from the alien. Yeah. It is huge. It's 540 millimeters from motor to motor. Should be an interesting flyer. I'm curious to see how it's going to do in the mountains. I have my suspicion that it's not going to need to be as good as the small quads. I think it's going to get thrown around a lot with the wind. GPS square trackers, I have mixed feelings about that. A guy is sending me lights, and he said he was going to like a lighting system to review. That would be Chris Hazard FPV, I think he is. His name is. He's got a lighting solution, sells lighting solutions. He's out of Hungary, but he's sending me a locator to test out, and I'm going to see how that works. But to be honest, in a lot of my situations, either the quad is near and I can find it, or the quad is basically gone. It's just stuck in a tree, stuck in the middle of a lake, on the top of a mountain, something like that. So recovery really isn't an option. Yeah, this is going to run 12-inch props. I think it will actually support up to 13, but I've got 12-inch at the moment. Let's see here. So yeah, so there's a 12-inch. As you can see, there's enough room, I think, there for a 13. See that way as well. Yeah, definitely enough room for maybe a 13. But we're gonna run 12 because that's what I got. And as I said before, it's a clean, dirty solution. So yeah. Plenty of wires here from other builds. I am either thankfully or not thankfully, depending on who you ask. If you ask my wife, not thankfully. If you ask anybody else, thankfully, perhaps. I'm a little bit of a pack rat. I like to keep things that might come in useful, like extra bits of wire. And you're going to get two different size wires here. It's not going to really make much of a difference because we're not running high amps through these. These are 18 gauge and these are 18 gauge and these are 16. So yeah, not going to make much of a difference. Especially for the short runs that these are. It's just enough to extend the wires out enough to get to the ESCs. So the ESCs I've got here. Yeah, 9-inch tries would be interesting. These are 740 kV motors, so they're probably a little bit low kV for that. That right there is a 9-inch master air screw. I got that for another quad, but yeah, might work. Obviously, so that's not going to work because the hole's too big or hole's too small. But ream it out and it will work. So the ECs, yeah, those are going to go more or less here. I'm really curious about how this is going to handle as well, Gons. If it's going to be good or not. So you can see here, this is the ESC plate. So ESCs, I'm going to get them as close to there as possible. More or less like, don't need that. More or less like that. So I need to get a little bit more length on these. I don't think the filtering quads, or the filtering is going to be the biggest issue with this. Yeah, so let's get these done. Typically when you're doing pre-made wires, these are pre-made wires. I think they came with something. I'm not sure what they came with, but they came with something. You're going to want to retin the ends because you never know what kind of solder they've used and if it's actually decent solder or not. I'm just going to retin one set of ends because I don't think it's really. I'm going to cut them just the same. So this is the stuff I don't like about building quads. It's all the fiddly stuff. You'll always end up doing this with every quad. High voltage, low amp. It's probably going to be a 4S system because basically that's all I've got. But when you're running really large props, you tend not to use high amps, especially in long distances. And this is mainly going to be long distance. So it should be within the 24, 30 amp maximum that the KISS has. So I'm not really too worried about amperage. You can put GPS return to home on this. Probably not. This is built with spare components, so it's basically I've never used it. I flew it a couple times when I first built it, way back when. But in general, I've never used it. I'm not really happy about the design. I think the aluminum arms tend to transmit more vibrations than, say, carbon fiber, or in this case, they had G10 arms at some point. So yeah, like I said, this is basically more or less a disposable quad. Seems weird to say, but it's what it is. If it goes down, it goes down. If it doesn't, hey, great. So how are you guys doing this week? What have you guys been up to? NASA system. Only problem with NASA systems is they do good for GPS and things like that, super stable for AP, but actually trying to fly them is, yeah, not exactly fun. It's kind of not my idea of fun. And I say that having a Mavic. The Mavic is great for what it does, but for flying, cold, windy, and rainy, can't fly. Yeah, that sucks. We're in our summer, and we're not expecting rain for probably at least another 2 to 3 months. Mavic have a manual mode, not that I know of. I think there may be an attitude mode, but I haven't really explored it. I wouldn't want to fly it in manual mode anyway, given the fact that it's you're actually using the gimbal to fly. So it's not the ideal. Basically, the gimbal kind of screws up your idea of where you are, what the quad is doing, and I'm going to say, and I say that with experience of actually tried to fly a gimbal quad with in FPV, and it just doesn't work. It's not very fun. You kind of really have to guess at what's happening. There. Okay. So yeah, fiddly details. It always takes the most time when building quads. Oh, something's not quite long enough, so you have to go through and extend wires, etc., etc. Should do this with a 4-in-1. That would be cool, but the way the power power distribution board is set up on this, it'd probably be more of a pain in the ass than it's actually worth. So eventually, if this does work well, it's probably going to be, I'll probably put a Core PNP Pro in it and 2.4 gigahertz video. Because heck, who wants a small quad? Or who wants a large quad if you can't fly it long distances, right? And I am curious to see if this is going to be more stable with the vibration dampening, the clean, dirty frame system. I'm curious to see if this is going to solve some of the issues that the larger quads have. Well, interesting experiment nonetheless, or regardless. We'll say, as a bit of news, that I did get my got the Quantum diversity receiver that I mentioned before. Got that in. I think it maybe was last week. Haven't really had a chance to test it out in the field. I've been kind of wanted to take it with me this week when I went hiking up in the mountains, but unfortunately I had so much gear that I didn't want to carry another video system with me. and another quad. So I ended up just taking my 5.8 system and didn't bring my 2.4. We'll say, yeah. So let me talk about the Quantum first, and then I'll talk about the performance of the TrueD. So there you go. That's a Quantum 2.4 gigahertz diversity. It's been bathing in, looks like beer, smells like beer. We do that to increase the performance. Yeah, so this is this Quantum 2.4 gigahertz diversity. I had to play with it just in the house, looking at how far it would get me, and it actually did pretty decent. The changeover is pretty rapid from what I can tell. We're going to test it out in the field and compare it with the immersion, the Duo 2400, and see how it does. Probably just using omnidirectional antennas, just because that's a fair comparison. I only have one directional antenna. So yeah, we're going to test that out and see how it does in the field, compare it with the immersion, and get some results. See if saving some money on the diversity receiver is possible or not. So yeah, and then let's talk a little bit about the TrueD. So I think the last I mentioned, I wasn't really happy with it, and I thought there was a bit more noise, switching noise, than what I would have liked. And after talking about that, I went out and read the manual, looking. Well, I was actually looking through the options, but there's a calibration on the TrueD. So evidently it helps if once you get your setup right, your antennas right, that you calibrate it against your VTX. And I had neglected to do that. So once I did that, I took it out this week. Like I said, probably flew about 1.2 kilometers, somewhere around there, away from me, max distance, and it worked pretty well, to be honest. Had a little bit of breakup when there was a lot of reflections, but other than that, it was good. We didn't used to mount the soft mount the flight controller. Hazard, how you doing? I was mentioning you. There's an option in the menu, Dennis, to calibrate it. Basically, you just stick the antennas you're going to use on it, and then kind of point it at your quad, turn your quad on, and then that calibrates it. So pretty simple, and it seems to have worked well in terms of performance. So yeah, a little bit happier with the TrueD now. Means that I can fly out and not really worry about what's going on. Got beer on my quad here as well. So let's see, what else? That's basically the news I've got for this week. And you notice that I'm not putting heat shrink on these because, well, I'm not connecting them to anything yet. I'm just extending. So I'll do the heat shrink later. I don't typically twist my wires together. I know that's probably best practice when doing this, but once you actually solder, it becomes impossible. I do go through and make sure they're good, nice and well soldered. They look good. Not like that. Hopefully you can't see too much of that. I can't see too much of that. quality should be pretty good here. The Mac does better, gets better quality off of the webcam I'm using. As for soft mounting the flight controller, well, the nice thing about this is the flight controller is going to sit on the clean frame, so it's going to need to be naturally soft mounted. I'm not sure doubly soft mounting will help in this case. And the nice thing about these clean dirty frames is they typically use the mass of the battery to dampen any vibrations that you get. So that's one of the nice things about it. 540 TX at 2.4 RX needs to be on a different crossfire. You be careful. Bandwidth is something different than the frequency, and that's what you're asking. So crossfire is on 868 in Europe and maybe some other places, and 915 in the US and Latin America and Australia, I believe. So 868 and 915. And that's pretty far away. You don't really have too much problems with interference. What you do get is, on some bands, you get harmonics. For example, if you had, yeah, so happy with that. If you had a 2.4 gigahertz video transmitter, or sorry, receiver transmitter, and a 1.3 gigahertz VTX, that will cause problems. So you typically need a notch filter or something like that to filter out those harmonics. 915 and 2.4 gigahertz, you don't need that. So yeah, that's why I run 2.4. The motors are Luminaire 4008 740 kV motors. Basically, when I built out my QAV540, I bought these. I carried them over to my Cinetank and then changed them out for I now use KDE motors on my Cinetank. So I moved these back to the QAV540. And I really like the KDE motors. Those are well built tanks. Not so efficient, but not so light. I saw some places that were saying they were about 78 grams. No, not on your life. But they're nice. They're good motors, the KDEs. I think those are the 2814 775 kV motors. So a little bit higher kV motors than these. Too quick. So I don't expect to get all the way through this build tonight, unfortunately. You're almost at the 40 minute mark. I'm not going to go through all of it tonight, but I will try to get the ESCs hooked up the ESC is hooked up, that's at least one step closer to being completed. And then I'll maybe finish this up next week, something like that. Give you guys a little bit more content. Talk a little bit about that. Is it okay to stay with 5.8 gigahertz when you build a long-range rig? In short, yes. I've actually done 5.2 kilometers with nothing more than 5.8. In fact, 5.8. And I didn't use a ground station either. If you want to hear crazy, I went 5.2 kilometers with nothing more than the receiver and Sky Zone version 2 goggles. So this obviously was in a very clean RF environment up in the mountains, so not a lot of interference. I was using a crosshair, VAS crosshair, directional antenna. It's a 13 dBi, if I remember, no, 10 dBi, if I remember correctly. 10 dBi and 5.2 kilometers I was able to achieve. Video was getting a little bit dodgy, but so crap, didn't wait long enough. So yeah, you can do long range on 5.8. You need a clean RF environment, principally. Number one. You need good antennas. Number two. And you need to know where you're flying. If you're doing directional, if you're doing one direction, then yeah, 5.8 will do you fine. As long as you make sure you stay within the beam of the antenna, the receiver, where it receives or where it transmits. You get outside that, then it starts getting a little bit dodgy. I don't like 5.8 a lot because its cutoff characteristics are quite abrupt. So if you go out of line of sight, you'll suddenly lose video, and it can really seem like, oh, you're something technical has happened, rather than, oh, you've just flown out of line of sight. And I've had that happen before. So lucky you. Living around the corner from QAV540 sounds like a little like paradise. I obviously do not. Living in Chile means I'm always waiting on stuff. Let's see, we're going to make that the front of the quad. There. So yeah, it takes forever for crap to get here. Way back when I started, I would always buy spares of everything because you never knew when you were going to need it. You know, you crash and boom. That's it. Motor's dead, and you're not flying for another 3-4 weeks until you get spare parts in. So yeah, I learned very quickly that I have to have a wide range of spare parts on hand. So once I learned that, then things became a little bit easier. Now I buy stuff in bulk. When I buy motors, I typically buy 5 at a time. So when it's not if, when things go wrong, I can just swap the motor out and purchase another one. Good things to be thinking about. Why is it different? Weird. Okay. I'm not sure if you can see this in the video, but that says ESC. I think I'm doing this actually the wrong way around. We'll reverse that. Plus. Yeah, so if you can see that, ESCs are labeled a little bit weird. So that's ESC4321. I actually reversed that ESC. Yeah. There, that should work a little bit better and I won't have to reverse that. Do I use smoke stopper? No. Because I've never, ever, ever blown up anything by accidentally soldering the XT60 connector backwards. Ah, you can hear the cricket sound. Excellent. Can you hear the cars on the road as well? It's quite annoying, actually. We live in a kind of residential place, but the cars pass fairly rapidly, so we're always getting road noise. Other than that, I love where I live. Do all these at once. Yeah, so yep, smoke stopper, nope, don't use it. I do occasionally check to see if, do a sanity check, make sure the resistance between positive and negative are, is fairly low, fairly high. It won't ever be zero, but make sure that's right. That's positive, that's negative. Yep, yeah, we're good. Being a little bit lazy here, I should replace these wires as well, but meh. It'll be fine. It won't crash. Positive. And there we go. 4 soldered ESCs. So now we have to solder in the motor wires. That's going to be a little bit fun. So as you can see, I tend to have a lot of supplies on hand. USB. Yeah, USB. What am I talking about? Lots of different sizes of shrink tubing. I got Velcro, zip ties, basically everything I need. Ready to use at hand. So I can build out quads fairly quickly. I don't tend to build out quads so much anymore because the ones I've got are working. And they're working reasonably well. My Alien has a bit of a vibration. I'm not sure what's going on with that. The Alien 4.5, when I just got out of a tree. And that started before I actually put it in the tree. So I got to figure that out. Think it's wind, but if it's wind, then I need to tune it better. And it was working fine. So if it's not wind, then something's gone wrong on the quad, and I need to figure out what's going wrong. If there's a ESC that's kind of damaged or something else. But yeah, the joys of quads. Yeah, clean dirty. It's gonna come back. I swear it. The only problem is with some clean and dirty setups, you really have to watch what happens with the QAV. I think they did a little bit to address this. Is that the bobbins tend to rip. So you'll crash and the whole top section will come off. And obviously, that's not a really great thing to have happen. I had a blackout 330 for a while. I swear that was cursed. But the problem with that, it was a really nice design. It kind of protected your FPV camera. It's going to need a little bit of work. It protected your FPV camera with a nice little cage. However, or your GoPro with a nice little cage. However, it had a large design flaw. It had a firewall for the battery. And that firewall for the battery, great idea, excellent. Stopped your battery from moving forward. This is when quads had the batteries in their ass end rather than, like they have them now. So it had a firewall, so if you hit on a frontal impact, the battery would hit the firewall. Excellent idea. Except, so imagine this here. You've got a little firewall more or less here, right? Well, actually the battery goes here. So I've got a firewall here. So the battery moves forward, hits the firewall, stops, doesn't take off your flight controller or any of your electronics up front. Great idea. Except the bolts, the screws, bolts, whatever you want to call them, that they included were nylon. And they said, better that the nylon fails than the carbon. Well, what happens? Frontal impact, the battery moves forward, hits the firewall, and all those nylon bolts shear. So anything that you have attached to the top plate just rips out, including your FPV camera, which they had like sticking right up here. So everything just rips out, and it takes your flight controller with it. So really great idea, bad implementation. I'm not sure what they were thinking when they designed that. It was a good idea when they designed it, except they just didn't think about the implications of what's going to happen when they actually hit something, or didn't do enough testing. I don't know what, but So yeah, that didn't last very long. I got rid of that pretty quickly, and then moved over to the Flying Cinema. I was using the Flying Cinema Cinetank at that time. So when they came out with the Tinquito 30, you could mount a battery up top, but it wasn't very common at the time. It's more the tail end batteries. This might likely probably going to be a tail end battery as well. We'll see. We'll see what I do. Obviously, there's a lot of options because you've got the slots cut in all over the place. So there's a lot of options with that. Could even run 2 batteries if I wanted it to. Oh, I apologize. It's going to get a little bit noisy here as I actually do the shrink wrap, or the shrink tubing. Heat gun, very handy to have. You can do this with a lighter and a match or anything like that, but this makes it simple, fast. Always turn the wires when you're doing this so they shrink down evenly, and done. Oh no, they went fast enough to crash. Don't think that nobody crashed back then. It happened. I know Drew's never posted any of his crashes, but I'm sure he crashed. Positive. And just like that. Yes, she's 540. Not that massive, to be honest. When you've built out an octocopter, then you start seeing massive. This is just a small little toy compared to the octocopters that I built out. If you ain't crashing, you ain't flying. That's what I like to say. Of course, these days I don't crash very much. So these got little channels under the arms so you can feed the wires through. Make it nice and clean. See if you can see that there, a little channel there. Obviously missing some bolts on the bottom, but I'll have to see how this thing flies. Nice thing is it does have built-in LEDs on it. Not sure if you can see that on the PDB here, but they've got actually little LEDs. The bad thing is I think I need to install a voltage regulator here, and I'm not sure I have a voltage regulator. I'm not sure if this is regulated automatically or not. Well, we'll find out. see here, octocopter, dual. So that's actually called a coaxial setup. The dual style, or the octocopter quad with motor above and below. My thoughts on that are, in general, it's good. Basically, there's trade-offs. Basically, every time you build a quad, every time you do something in engineering, you have some trade-offs. In this case, what you have is you have a trade-off between efficiency basically, yeah, in this case, the trade-off comes from with the coaxial setup. What you lose a little bit of efficiency. So basically, you're always going to be, the bottom motor isn't going to be working as well as it could be. In the octocopter, each prop is doing basically all the work that it could be doing. So the standard octocopter. However, that's in terms of efficiency, of work. What the quadcopter style coaxial setups allow is they allow you to run larger props. And larger props means more efficiency. So it's not a cut and dry, yeah, this is going to be better, this is going to be worse. Typically, larger props gives you better efficiency. That's the general rule. So that's the argument in favor of a coaxial setup. Is just basically airframe size lets you run larger props. If you such large arms better run cables longer between motors and ESCs, or ESCs and power supplies. I typically run them between the motors, just because that's the way the quad is set up. If you look, the power distribution doesn't really let you run that out there. I don't think this is very long arms, to be honest. It's not long enough to really make a difference. And the motor revolutions that you're going to have aren't, you're not talking insane RPMs here. These are going to be fairly slow spinning motors. Yeah, I typically don't like using zip ties on motor wires, but I think that's going to be better. It'd probably be better to run these up above as well, since we're probably going to be landing on them. But we're going to leave them there, living dangerously. Hopefully, get enough. Oh, look at that! Just barely reach. Perfect, like a glove. How about that? Now the trick is going to be soldering these. Probably should have soldered the ESCs before I soldered the motors to the ESCs before I soldered the ESCs to the PDB. Just possibly. Yeah, we're gonna do. I think that's going to work. We're going to do it like that. Solder. I hit the camera. Oh, hey, how about that? Better? Let's see when it comes back. Better? Yeah, looks good. "20-minute flights?" Yeah, I'd say 20-minute flights. Maybe a little bit longer. I can get about 20 minutes on the Cinetank, and I think this is going to be slightly more efficient. Just slightly. And at this point, you're going to remind me, "Hey, Matt, didn't you say you should re-tin these wires?" And I'm going to say, "Yeah, I did, but I'm not going to." One of the things you learn building out sounding quads is you get a high tolerance for pain, for burns. Other technical questions you might have is, what temperature is your soldering iron set at? And my response will be, I have no clue. Hot enough. Let me tell you. It is set at, looks like 400 degrees. Celsius, obviously. I'm using a fairly large tip here because, hey, we're working with fairly large gauge wires. And look at that. Of course, I've soldered it backwards, but hey, no worries. That'll come out in the wash. The real trick is going to be soldering this one. Yeah. It's nice soldering so big. Ah, that's a good idea. Straws for running my motor wires. Way back in the day, I used the braided cable. This stuff here, I used that to organize the motor wires. But yeah, I'm lazy. What HD camera, FPV camera will I install in this? Not sure about FPV, not sure about HD at the moment. I do have a RunCam Split 2 that I just got in. I've been using actually I bought two of them. I bought one of them for my G2 because my Split was kind of giving me a lot of lag. And so that's a possibility. I have my old G2, or I mean my old G2, my old Split that I could use. Ouch. Or I could use a session on it as well. And if I really want to get fancy, do some cool stuff, and have a secret weapon. Okay, not secret weapon, but a while back I purchased a wearable gimbal, so I can stick that on it as well, potentially. And at this point, some of you are going to say, wait, Matt, what about putting heat shrink on the ESCs? And I will tell you, yeah, good point. Completely forgot about that. So we're going to unsolder the ESCs anyway. That's okay. It's good for doing layouts. Yeah, there we go. Better. Makes more sense to do it this way anyway. Yeah, I like the splits. They're nice, low weight. Yeah, there we go. All that work. And have to undo it. Such is the way of quads, right? Yeah, so those are good. By the way, how you doing, Alan? Yeah, if you lose one motor on a coaxial quad, you will be able to fly. Basically the same. You don't like my squeaky chair? What's up with that? It's how my wife knows I'm still alive. Humboldt, I'm surprised you don't recognize this. Come on, you were old school. What is this? I'll give you a hint. Okay, good. I was worried. QAV, something big. QAV540. Juice used to pimp these before I moved to Bolt. The old school OG. Yeah, that's not working. Yeah, I'm an expert at soldering now. When I first started with quads, I had no idea what the hell I was doing. I'm not sure I'm not going to say I'm still I'm an expert, but at least things don't come desoldered while I'm flying anymore, or at least not frequently. Kind of flight times I'm expecting. Depends on what I put on it. Probably anywhere between 20 to 15 to 20 minutes, I would say. Maybe a little bit more depending on the motor or depending on the batteries I use. How big I go. If I use two or not in parallel. if I put a gimbal on it or not. Like I was saying earlier, I do have a wearable gimbal for the session that I could use if I so desire. I'm probably not going to put it on there, mainly because I don't think it's completely necessary, but it might be cool for some mountain flying. The idea is to have something bigger, but still a little bit more acrobatic. And before you ask, 12-inch, how can that be acrobatic? It actually can. Go check out Juice's old videos. He used to flip and roll these things all the time. Just have to do with a little bit more anticipation. Not something you're going to do. Yeah. Not going to do steel style flips. The instant flips. Takes a little bit more time to get around. Bigger. Motors don't react quite so quickly. But it's possible. 450, yeah. By the way, for you health and safety guys, you shouldn't solder and drink beer. Mainly, you shouldn't consume anything, any food after soldering. Now, this is a tricky bit. And before we do this, we are going to install some new wires. Changing out tips because, hey, the QAV or the KISS are very, very small, and this is huge. That's my favorite tip. My soldering iron is a Hakko 936, supposedly Hakko. I'm going to say Hakko. Say supposedly because I don't think Hakko ever made a 220 volt version of the 936. And I found this in eBay. Fun fact, lead gets picked up in the air, blown around. So technically you shouldn't eat anything or drink anything while soldering, because you're breathing it in if you don't have a fan like I do, or I don't. You know, like the barking dogs? Of course you don't. I'm surprised you like dogs. You're a cat. For those that don't know, Isle of Mull FPV actually is an artist. Wrote a book about the world famous Tobermory cat. I I actually read the Wikipedia article. Had a long, protracted struggle with a publisher who absconded with his work. Or at least took the idea of Tober Mary Cat and ran with it. Tober Mary Cat is a fictional cat, a composite of many different cats. Am I getting this right? Parody of Donald Trump. Excellent. Excellent. So I know this reading his Wikipedia page. That's how I know this. Also, he is probably one of the world's best proximity pilots, even though he doesn't say that. He won't admit it, but he is. By the way, I'm having a little bit of a hard time desoldering these cables because these ESCs have been conformal coated. Yeah, so check out Isle of Moles FPV feed. His channel. Got lots of good stuff on there. All I hear is crickets. Love crickets. Yeah, it's nice. Typically during the day we don't have a lot of noise other than, you know, man-made noise. Mainly because it's so hot. But then in the evening we get the nice crickets. So that's nice. Relaxing. Either large gauge twisted or thin gauge side by side. Not sure what I'm going to use there. I think we're going to use the thin gauge side by side just because it's easier to work with. "28 degrees there. It's 28 degrees here too." Fahrenheit, yeah. I was going to say, Luminar sponsoring this build. Haha, no. Yeah. You have to go read about or listen to my my thoughts about the QAV540. There's a reason why I'm rebuilding this and it's not in active use. No, they probably don't want to sponsor this. Like I said, these arms transmit a lot of vibrations, and you crash and you need to hammer them back into shape because they'll just bend. They just bend at the slightest crash. I don't know if you can see that very well, but if you take a look, that's not really parallel. It's kind of bent there. Let's get something nice and straight so you can see. So that's straight. A little bit of a bend there. So yeah, it's a nice idea. Practicality wise, not so great. I'm putting this together more or less as a disposable quad. Flying in the mountains using spare parts that I've had. It's probably not going to fly the best, but hey, we're going to try it. Going to see if it works. Some of you may have already seen this, but tools, really handy tools to have in any build are wire strippers. These particular wire strippers are Greenlee Communications. You can find them on Amazon. See, you can see that. Greenlee. And you can buy packages. So these run from 20 to 30 gauge AWG, and I've got other ones that ran from 24 to 10. So these come as a pack. What frame would you recommend for a similar setup? I would say probably the Cinetank. I really like the Cinetank. I've had it a while. Will say that I was sponsored by them at some point. Not anymore. I'm not sure they're really active, so that gives me pause in recommending it. But I really like how it's built. It uses tube arms, carbon fiber tube arms, so they don't bend. It's probably around similar weight, and you can get similar prop sizes as well. So it's got its own weaknesses. The motor mounts aren't really the strongest, but they're plastic, so they're easily replaced. And they're not expensive to replace either. So, and I like the gimbal setup. Cinetank. Yeah, they do snap, but they're easily replaceable as well. Yep, tricky to get level. You actually, the frame has a little bit of twist in it. I don't know if you've noticed that, Danny. I know you have one. But I can twist my frame a little bit. So that may be your problem. You mean how they sit on the tube arms. Yeah, technically, I've got some here. No, I don't have any, unfortunately. But they have little holes. The twisting of the frame, yeah, I can believe that on a 16-inch setup. It's a good frame, but like I said, it's got weaknesses. All frames, unfortunately, have weaknesses. You're never going to have a perfect frame. Just got to take the good with the bad. That said, I like the Cinetank. A lot of flexibility with it. You sold your Cinetank, Alan. Yeah, I miss mine. I miss flying mine. I need to get it out and fly it some more. Some point. When I'm not building a QAV540. Other tools I use, the older guys here in the chat will probably appreciate this. These are jeweler's lenses, and I use them for doing close range work. I did have my eyes operated on a while back, so my short range vision really sucks now, and my close-up vision really sucks. So these come in extremely handy when soldering ESCs, things like that. Close, fine work. And of course they have magnifying glasses on them as well, which makes it really nice working on small bits. Yeah, jeweler's loops work as well. These are nice. They've got LED lighting. Not that I've ever used that, but definitely very, very handy to have. Yeah, my far vision is good, except it's kind of a trade-off. I traded my far vision, or my near vision, for my far vision. I think it's a reasonable trade-off. I don't wear glasses anymore, which is a plus. I always hated wearing glasses. By the way, when soldering the KISS 24 ESCs, the worst pad to solder I find is the ground, the signal ground. Everything else is really easy, but the signal ground usually takes a lot of heat. Tweezers also extremely handy for doing close-up work. So I hate to ask you guys this, but what do you think of the guy flying his quad over the Airliner? I'm assuming most of you guys have seen that. If you haven't, yeah, basically some idiot flew up to intentionally, looks like it, fly over an airliner, which is probably one of the more stupid things that I've seen in FPV. And I've been around it long enough to see a lot of stupid crap. definitely never should have been shared, never should have been done. But now that it has been shared, it's kind of out there. I don't know. It's just going to give us FPV guys a bad name. It's going to make our lives difficult. Usually it's the Phantom guys that are getting all the flack, but when people do shit like that, I really makes me mad, because we're supposed to know better, even though we're the bad boys of FPV, or bad boys of the drone world. But flying next to planes, even close to planes, incredibly bad idea. So I hope this poor guy, I say poor guy, I hope this guy gets ostracized and basically never gains a sponsorship. Never gains many followers and is a pariah of the FPV world. But knowing the way the world works, he's probably going to find the next black sheep. Team Black Sheep. He'll call it Team White Sheep. Cheap rip-off clone of Trappy. We love you, Trappy. If you're out there watching, probably not. He was closer than he needed to be, Alan. Which basically means he was, if he was in the same sky, if he could see it, he was closer than he needed to be. Cleaning up these solder pads because they're a little bit ginky because of the conformal coating. If you're wondering, these are the conformal coating I use is urethane conformal coating from MG Chemicals. Works okay. Team White out. Awesome. Yeah, Trappy's done some really really dodgy shit in his time. Flying in the middle of London, for example. I think that was probably with this Discovery. I think that was pretty not smart, but it's not airline levels. They're dodging airliner levels of stupidity. There's one thing people take seriously, is airline security. Airplane security. Especially since 9/11. violent wind that created the back of the airliner when he ended up behind it. If you look carefully at the video, I watched that because I saw some comments on that. He actually flies along above the airplane for a while, and then dives down, does a kind of a roll behind it. So it's easy to lose that turbulence in that roll. And I think that's why you don't see that, the turbulence that you would expect. Do you think it's easier to lose a quad completely or know where it is up in a tall tree and not be able to get to it? I would say good question. If it was up a tall tree and not being able to get to it, I would do everything I could to actually retrieve it. I wouldn't go as far to cut the tree down, but I would and have spent weeks waiting for a quad to fall from a tree. I would go drive 2 hours with a slingshot and try to retrieve it. How far up the tree is it, Humboldt? I just pulled mine out of a 20-meter tree. With nothing but a slingshot and some rope. Cutting down the ends a little bit to make it more manageable. Leave less possibility that they're going to slip off and spark and do whatever wires do to destroy ESCs. My soldering is getting worse as the night wears on. I blame the beer. Two and three. What have you been doing, man? I'm not sure, Humboldt. I think you're picking up my bad habits. Saw that I lost one up a tree and wanted to make me feel better. Did I hit the thing again? I think I might have hit the thing again. Let's see. Oh, good. Okay, yep, so ESC is pretty much done. I'm going to stick some heat shrink on them. And then we'll call it a night. I don't blame bears for losing my quad. I blame Juice. Always blame Juice. He got me into this. He put his videos on the YouTube. I saw them. I said, oh, I want to do that. So it's all his fault. What is juice? Juice as in I'm not sure where I'm typing. I blame Juice. J-U-Z. Juice. Juice 70. OG. FPV pilot. FPV quad pilot. Yeah, he's definitely the source of a lot of inspiration. With Juice, he got a lot of the old schooler guys into it. Then Sharp Who came along. And now Steel and Schizo and all the other guys out there. Don't ask me who my favorite pilot, FPV pilot is. Full coverage insurance. I don't think he's going to give me full coverage insurance. Juice, if you don't know, is Australian. Good guy, really good guy. Met him briefly in Hawaii. Wish I had gotten to fly with him, but too busy doing all the competition things to really enjoy the camaraderie. But yeah, he's a really good guy. Flies in Australia, obviously, since he's Australian. For those of you who missed it, that was Midwest Rob. Midwest Rob was big as well, but I think it was Luminaire. I think it was Luminaire as well as Juice. Who else did I watch back in the day? Boris B, obviously. Watched him a lot. So Boris B I watched. Watched Blackout the Drunk, obviously. Metal Danny, yeah. He got a lot of people into FPV as well. His forest runs are legendary. Still don't know how he did that shit. And now I'm going to have to change out my tip again, because this is too small. There was a guy in South America flying planes through towns. I saw that just recently. I don't remember who or where. somebody was asking about how did we get into FPV, or who are the pioneers, and somebody brought up his name, and I had never heard of him before, really. But I checked it out. His videos checked out. He's doing that in 2008, 2009, if I remember correctly. Crazy. Years before TBS, yes. Trappy was 2009, I believe. Somewhere around there. Yeah, now we thought of the ESCs again. This time we're doing it properly. Making sure we get them in the right order. A more sane order. So that one goes there. This one goes here. So once I've got this together, we're going to call it a night. So I've mainly accomplished everything I wanted to accomplish. I'm not going to install the current sensor quite yet, or well, actually the XT60 quite yet. That'll come later. That goes there. Just figuring out order. Figuring out how I'm going to sometimes building these things isn't the easiest. It'd probably make more sense if I went from the bottom to there. So I'm going to throw some screws in here and go from the other side. So way back when Luminaire first came out with this, these side plates were an innovation. Let me tell you, innovative, yeah, pain in the ass, definitely. So it always takes a little bit of effort to get them to sit in there properly. And, I don't know if you've ever built one of these out before, you actually have to tape off. I don't know if you can see it. There's little LED contacts right there, there. You actually have to tape those off. Otherwise, you plug this in and you get sparks. Because it shorts out against the carbon of these. So, word of warning, if you're building out a QAV540, gotta watch that. One more time. Down here. Also, if you're building this out, be sure to use Loctite on the screws, otherwise they will back out. Anytime you have metal on metal, typically, metal screws going into metal retainers, you want to use Loctite to ensure that they don't back out with the vibrations. And what we're doing here is we're just sticking on the top plate so we can access it easier from the bottom. That I don't have to be futzing about too much. A few screws in here. The other thing about this frame that's always fun is there is a ton of screws. Just on one side, I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. There should be one there. 19. 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. 27 screws. 27 screws just to bolt one side of the dirty plate down. So there's another 27 on the other side. Not made with weight savings in mind. By any stretch of the imagination. What's going on there? Still transmitting? You guys still hear me? 2 hours in. Boy, really long. Said I was going to wrap this up an hour ago. And now we take out all the screws on the bottom. So I hope you guys are enjoying this old school build. Next week we'll probably do the top frame. That should go together a little bit easier. I'm probably actually going to leave the GST connectors on this servo leads, these on there, and wire it into the KISS. That reason being, since it is a dirty clean frame, I'd like to have a little bit of a if it does crash, does separate, yeah, a little bit of strain relief. Motors that I'm using are the Luminaire. Oh no! Got a stripped up screw there. The motors that I'm using are Luminaire 4008 740 kV motors, and the props are 12-inch. I'll probably use APC, I think. No, these are the HQ. These are HQ QAV540 props, if I recall correctly. Eight more screws to go. A little bit of a line because I'm going to figure out how to get this screw out here. So I'm just going to take the other side out. Those are my dogs barking at something out there. Not sure what the heck they're barking at, but they're barking at something. Haven't joined me before? Welcome. Thanks for coming and hanging out. And oh yeah, I should have put it in. Screw in here. Probably should put a couple screws in each arm before you do this. Otherwise I tend to flop around. Just want to see the props on there. Yeah, good man. Had it hanging on the back wall there in my previous videos with the props on for ages. I haven't done anything with it. Hitting the camera again. Yeah, okay. So there, you can see my shorts. There we go. It's free! All this so I can solder the... That was good. I don't know if you can see that there. Took off a little bit of insulation. Anyway, all this so I can solder the last two ASCs on again. Again. There's that wire now. By the way, when working with electrical tape, you should never pull it to cut. I guess not cut, but separate it. The piece that you're working on, you should always cut it, because what tends to happen is you lose elasticity. Yeah. Okay. Last bit. Then we're pretty much done. There's not much difference building a mini quad and a large quad. Just Main difference is, well, larger quads are bigger, easier. How many amp ESCs? These are KISS 24s. Probably never going to run more than 50 amps. In my experience on my Cinetank, I've never seen more than 50 amps on that. Never. And that's in total. That's not one ESC, that's in total. So probably you're talking good 12 amps per motor, somewhere in there. So the KISS 24 should be overkill. Should. And there we go. No, my quad's definitely not the most efficient. Just, it is what it is. I know how these things tend to run. I've been here, done that. The Cinetank isn't really all that efficient. Problem with these big quads, especially the bigger motors, is you need, or bigger props, is you need bigger motors to push them, and bigger motors tend to be heavier. Heavier motors implies that you need more reinforcement in the frame. So it's just, it is not ideal. That's the problem with large quads, is you lose a lot in efficiency because of the weight of everything. How hard is it to set up the KISS? It's actually pretty simple. Back in the day, it was harder because you used to have to do a lot of futzing about to get the ESCs flashed, but now they've now done introduced software flashing of the ESCs, so it's really quite simple. 4 minutes flight time. Ooh. I think I get about 6 minutes on my Alien 4.5. But this being kind of easy on the throttle. That's with my 5-inch props. So it's possible 5-inch props and 1800 milliamp hour battery, or 1900 milliamp hour battery, and RAM. I'm going to use a KISS flight controller on this. It's going to be a kind of an acro mountain diving long range-ish quad. The idea is to keep it simple, still give it some capacity for acro. And this is a fiddly bit. Trying to get all the wires in there so they don't pinch. Yeah, fun stuff. This way. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoy my epicness. I try hard to bring you epic stuff. Don't need to write scripts to make things work? No. It's fairly simple. You can do beta flight, you can do KISS. If you can do Pixhawk, you can do KISS. I have faith in you, Alan. I think Pixhawk is a much harder setup than KISS. There's so many settings, so many things you really need to know to get it set up and flying well. Though recently they have done a lot. I've been fairly impressed with the latest Pixhawk setups. The auto tune on position hold works really well. I just used that recently and found that it did decent. That's on the Pixhawk, obviously, that I'm talking about here. So like I said, this is kind of fiddly. And everything to fit in there properly. Thank you, Dennis. Glad you enjoyed that waterfall. It's a fairly strenuous hike up there. The real problem comes because I was carrying the quad stuff plus camping gear plus batteries, and I tried to limit how many batteries I took. I think took 7 batteries. 1 quad. So the pressure was really on to get decent footage in just a couple batteries. So I flew 2 batteries early in the morning. And then after that, 1 more battery in the main waterfall, and then a couple batteries on the way back. 3 batteries on the way back. So I flew all of my batteries except 1 battery on that trip, which almost never happens. Right now I'm just fiddling because I've got one of the wires outside the channel and it doesn't want to come loose. There we go. There. Yes, definitely crossfire. Missed. No, I didn't. As they say, discretion is a better part of valor. So I was discreet and decided I wasn't going to risk my quad. My buddy Gons, he was in earlier. I'm not sure if he's still launching. He flew through it. So if you check out his channel, that would be Gone Q. He actually flew through it. It got water on his lens, etc., etc. So I said, no, I'm going to be safe. I'm going to come back with my quad, because if it went down there, there was no reason, absolutely no way that I was going to get it back. It would have been gone forever. The river was too strong, and there was no access. So, and this is just for Dragoners. There you go. Props on. We're going to stop here for the night. I maybe do a little bit more at some point. Put the rest of the screws in, etc., etc. Make sure everything's nice and tidy, and then we'll carry on next week. Hey, Peter, how you doing? You just joined us as I'm about to leave. Yes, Gone Q. He says chickens. He only hears chickens. Boy, 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 boy. Yeah, no, I still like having my quads, and I didn't want to lose that one, so nope, making sure it came back with me. Okay, hopefully you can see me now. Yeah, how about that? Right. So, hope you guys have enjoyed. We'll see you guys hopefully next week. We'll carry on with that build. Install whatever things that I can find to make it actually work. And shouldn't be too much. Shouldn't be too much more. Just stick the flight controller on there. Ha, steel balls. It's a fact. No steel balls. Too much money. Not enough sense. So yeah, we'll carry on with this build. Get it all set up. And then next week, we should have it ready to go. And I can give it a fly and see how it performs and let you guys know. Right. See you guys next week. Take care.